All right, it's the Jeremy Scott program. It's episode 14, and I'm here with Mr. Jon Forward. Jon Forward, Jonathan Forward?
John.
Jon Forward. He's done a lot for the comedy scene in New Brunswick. You've been running the longest open mic in New Brunswick now.
Wilser's room, technically. I don't know if it's open anymore, but, you know.
It's changed a bit. Yours has consistently been the same open mic. Did it start out as No Jokes Barred?
Yeah, day one, 2024, no jokes barred. It was mostly, and the name is like there's a little bit of spite baked into it, because around that time in 2014, comedy as an entertainment option in St. John, and probably New Brunswick in general, was kind of an unusual thing. Like, it used to be when people would find out that I'm a comedian, they'd be like, there's comedy in St. John? Now that's not the case, and Mullinger did his part in like normalizing that as a normal thing to go out and do, and but on the lower end of the spectrum with the open mics, there was the occasional kind of one-off shows, and I remember whenever I did I remember in particular I did a show at the Somerset pub in St. John, which is no longer in existence, but there was lots of these just kind of pop-up shows that was basically an open mic. It was pre-booked. But I remember I had a couple of my early Wilser's Room sets on tape, and I sent it to Shane Ogden, who was putting on shows at the 3 Mile a few times a year back then.
Was it Chuckles then?
No, it was just called Shane Ogden Presents, I believe.
Okay.
And a few times a year he would bring in somebody, and they would be like sold out 300 people shows, which is kind of cool that I don't often get to experience that anymore. But there would be these odd pop-up shows, and it seemed to be everybody was paranoid that like our target demographic was like sweet old people, and that if you went too hard then it would scare them away, and that would destroy the return customer base or something like that. And so I remember when I was pretty early on in stand-up, and I recorded a couple of my Wilser's Room sets, which they're okay. There's I think one of those two bits that I sent him I probably still bust out every now and then. It's not anything that was beyond the pale, but there was swears and such, and I remember like, okay, I've been doing comedy for a few months now. I'm gonna send these off to the guy that runs the big shows, and maybe I can open. And he responded back in kind of I feel like he overreacted a little bit. He kind of reacted to my material like I was like Sam Kinison screaming at people, but that wasn't really ever my vibe.
When was that? So you started
that
No
would have
Jokes Barred in
been
2014. When did you do your very first set?
I did like music open mics for like a year or two almost exclusively, because I didn't know that there was anything else available.
Okay.
Actually, the Wilser's Room music open mic, I did that once. I think it was on Tuesday, and they put me up and it was fine, but the guy running that was like, there's a comedy open mic too once a month. And I was like, what? Oh. And then I did like, I started doing the Wilser's Room shows. At that time, every comedian in New Brunswick, that was the only open mic. So
you'd make everybody make the trek to Fredericton.
Yeah, and I feel the scene was more cohesive then, because everybody kind of did the same show together. Okay. It wasn't as tribal as it is now. But I first started getting in with them, and it's a different thing doing even a comedy open mic, which even a bad comedy open mic is still better than a good music open mic for a stand-up set. Yeah. My best sets at a music open mic, people tolerated, and it's not a good. Most people that are going to a music open mic, that's just background music for drinking.
Yeah, you got a date or you.
They're not always. It depends on the show. There's different ones that are more of a show, but people aren't there for that. So, dabbled around with the music open mics, and I remember doing my first Wilser's Room and having a punchline get a laugh and be like, oh yeah, that line was supposed to be funny. I forgot, because I was just so used to delivering it into the void of the music open mic audience. And A friend of mine, Steve Fudge, who is a comedian from St. John, he sent me like a picture one day. They had advertised like comedy open mic at some bar in the North End in St. John, and I just decided to show up. And I didn't understand that comedy open mic doesn't usually mean you just show up and get on. That was like a booked show, but the guy that was running it gave me a spot, and I did it. And then I did the Wilsers Room, but I'd still do these one-offs, and everybody was really paranoid about being too offensive and scaring people. And then like around the same time that I was trying to put together a show, I watched the Hulk Hogan classic No Holds Barred, and I was like, I'm gonna do a show called No Jokes Barred, because and that was to spite Shane, because I did one of those Somerset shows, and I remember. And again, I've told this story to him. I'm not talking out of school. You don't need to tattle on me. He's aware of the story. Um, he kind of beforehand in the group chat was like, now everybody, I don't want to tell anybody what kind of material to do, but let's take it easy, and we don't want to scare anybody away. I was being paranoid, but I felt like that was directed at me, given the prior conversation where Shane kind of criticized my approach and kind of said that I wasn't really ready for the big time yet, and he wasn't wrong. And it's good. I was pissed off at the time, but
does he mean like the big time, or the big time like a comedy open mic big time?
The 300 people at a 3 Mile before like a touring professional comedian. Yeah. And he wasn't wrong. That didn't make me any less upset about it, but to me, being told no gave me a drive. Spite fuels me, so if somebody doesn't want to give me something, I want to prove that person wrong, so I kept at it. But he made a point of saying in the group chat, like, hey, take it easy. And I knew for a fact that my plan, I've busted it out on like a promo video every now and then. When I first started, I had this weird comedy joke book from like I think the 1930s or 40s, and the jokes are just mostly incomprehensible nonsense. And I had this idea that I was going to use this for crowd, where I would do a little bit of crowd work, and I would talk to somebody, and as soon as they said something that I could kind of shoehorn into one of the chapter categories, I would open up to that chapter and get them to pick a random number between this and this, and I would give them a custom joke from the book. So I knew it was going to be fairly clean, because it's a corny old joke book. And so knowing that I was going to do a mostly clean set, getting pre-warned, and then right before I went on, Shane pulled me aside and was like, hey, John, I know I don't want to tell you what to do, but like he made a special point of warning me to make sure that I tone down my usual horrific terrorism of comedy. And it rubbed me the wrong way. So I was like, you know what? No jokes barred on my show. I don't want anybody to worry about getting in trouble. The biggest trouble you're going to get into is that it's going to bomb and you're going to embarrass yourself in public. I feel like that's enough.
And your shows have good turnout, so I mean, you definitely are risking embarrassing yourself in public, because they're not a music open mic with like 10 people that are never going to remember you. I've been to some of your shows, especially as of late, at Waste a Day, where the place is just, it's packed. There's not enough seats for everybody. People are standing in the back. There's like 50 people in that little room, 50, 60 people.
Yeah, those are good ones. There's the occasional 10-person show, but those are fun too in their own way.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just decided early on. I've always had the philosophy that I do what's good for me. I'm not going to pretend like it's all altruistic. I think that if it's good for me, then that's going to be to the benefit of the performers in general. But like for me, I would rather somebody try and fail spectacularly than to kind of leave something on the shelf that might have been great because they're worried about how it's going to go, or somebody getting upset, something like that. And there have been it's been like 11 and a half years of No Jokes Barred now, and I can only think of like in that whole time, every month except for there was some pauses over COVID, and when venues would shut down, I need to find a new place. I could count on one hand the number of times where like somebody was performing and something genuinely out of pocket was said, and it's the worst case scenario is really not that bad. At the end of the day, it is just people saying words. Nobody's dying. Nobody's getting hurt. And most of in my experience, the brief moments of ugliness, it's not really something that continues. Generally, that's just a bad moment. Somebody's in a bad mood and they said something they shouldn't have. There was some dealings with the regulars at the R Bar, which was kind of like a divey karaoke bar that I started No Jokes Barred at. It's since been gentrified, so it's a little bit less dicey in there.
Nobody's gonna leave a comedy show and then 10 years later still wake up in the morning and be like, that guy or girl said that thing and I'm still mad about it. Like, it's like, I'm upset right now. Maybe send an email to No Jokes Barred, and then 2 months later, that's not even probably in their mind. It was a joke.
No, but like we used to have problems with the regulars who like Union Street bars in St. John are a certain vibe, and there's people with various problems that have been frequenting those places for many years, and like this is my place. I don't care if you're doing a comedy show. This is where I'm going tonight. And they get a little bit belligerent and interrupty. And I remember one comedian just lost it on somebody and was like, "Why don't you go home and cash your welfare check or something," which isn't nice.
No.
But I mean, it happened, and there's been a couple of sets that have been kind of out of pocket, and I'd feel worse about it if people were doing those kind of sets where I don't want to be the arbiter of deciding whether or not something is genuinely some kind of phobic or racist or hates whatever. I really just assume, even if somebody is saying something terrible, if they're coming at it in the framework as a joke. But in the rare occasion where maybe it got a little bit too close or maybe even past that line, I don't want to be the one drawing the line. And I don't trust anybody to be that person. But there have been sets where that's on, I don't know where the line is, but that's probably on the wrong side of it. And it's not like those people are crushing and the audience is like, yay, more of that, please. Generally, if a set like that happens, it bombs, and that person eventually either gets better or quits comedy, and it's kind of a self-regulating thing.
Yeah, the universe works out those people where they, unless they're just totally blind, most people have you'd think most people have the self-awareness to see, okay, nobody's laughing, and then when I'm done my set, nobody talks to me. I don't hear good job, and when I do, it's fake as hell.
Yeah, and there was one particularly out of pocket set that happened at McGill's a couple of years ago that some people still talk about. But
the topic was a part of that. I think I heard the story.
But the guy bombed, and every single person that went up after the show kind of threw in a couple of digs and made fun of the kid. And he took his licks. He stayed for the whole show. I told that guy, like, yep, that was a disaster, but good for you for taking a swing. It didn't work out. I don't know if anybody could have taken that premise and made it not horrific, but I appreciate the effort, and I wasn't going to ban that guy from ever coming back. If he had asked, if that kind of thing happened regularly,
if he came back the next night, did the exact same set.
I've never been in a position where I've had to make that kind of a decision where I'm like, you know what? The No Jokes Barred policy is getting off the rails with this person, so I'm going to need to set some boundaries. I've never had to, and I don't want to. Like I said, I don't want to be the dad of the show who decides what's allowed and what's not. I mean, that's for the audience to decide. And again, if I was in a position where there was regular terrible things happening that were upsetting people and it was tanking the show, then I might have to make a decision. But I've never had to, and I hope I never do.
It works itself out. We have a parallel story, I feel like, there's some parallels to you. I mean, you started at music open mics doing comedy because you didn't know where comedy mics were. I did the same. I didn't even have Facebook, so I didn't know where any things were. And I would go to the Wilsers Room music open mic and the exact same thing. The bartender, like the third time that I went there, is like, there's a comedy show that they do here. And that's what he said is there's a comedy open mic. I showed up to that open mic thinking this is an open mic like all the other music open mics. And then I come to find out that it's not, that you had to sign up ahead of time. And I may have lied to the girl and said, well, I've actually been doing comedy for a couple of years. I'd really like to get on here. And she shoehorned me in, and that was my last time doing comedy at the comedy show there. But I met you there. And then you told me about No Jokes Barred. You invited me down to your show. And you were like, you should make a Facebook, and you'll know where these shows are. I make a Facebook, and it's just like, oh, there's shows everywhere. It seemed like there was a big bloom happening because I'd hear people talk about the time like 2014, 2015. There wasn't a lot of regular mics going on, but then when I started, there was like 2 in Moncton, there was 1 or 2 in Fredericton, there was like you had your show in St. John, and they were all happening monthly versus before it seemed like what you're describing in 2014. They were just like one-off shows. They weren't regular shows.
There was the occasional one-off. There was Wilsers Room once a month, and there was some competition to get on that because there was only one option, and
it's a 2-hour show.
If I didn't get on that show, then I didn't get to do comedy this month. And there were fewer comedians than there are now, but still. You couldn't get on every month even, so sometimes there'd be 2 or 3 months in between sets.
When you started No Jokes Barred, were you right from the beginning like, I want this to be a monthly show?
Yeah, and that's what it was. And honestly, people have tried to do weekly, and I don't know if anywhere. And Comic Sutra's doing weekly shows, and that's a different story. And I'm happy to see that happening. But in St. John, anytime somebody's tried to do a weekly or even a bi-weekly, it's just been too much, and it's hard to get people in seats. When it's monthly, it's more of an event. But even in bigger cities like Halifax, for example, which is the city outside of New Brunswick I've gone to the most often. I haven't been there in years, but they've got weekly open mics pretty much every night of the week, sometimes multiple open mics, but and that's good for stage time and getting your practice in, but and again, I don't want to speak out of school. I haven't been there.
It's a bigger
years.
Population to draw.
But some of those shows, when they're weekly, when it becomes just going through the motions, it's not really a show, and there isn't really. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's no audience at an open mic in New Brunswick, and you're just performing for the other comedians. But that seemed to happen more often with the open mics that I did in Halifax. The difference is, in my experience, at least in New Brunswick, if there's no audience and it's just the comedians will make a slight amount of effort at least to be the audience and pay attention to the show, whereas in Halifax, in my experience, found that it was just kind of, hey, I'm just going to show up, I'm going to do my set, and then I'm going to pop out. Sometimes people do that here too if they're just on their break from work. That's fine. But that seemed to be the default, and like nobody was paying attention to anybody else. Before, generally, like the average person that I saw at a Halifax open mic was going over their notes. They went up and they did their set, and then they left. They weren't watching the other show.
And from what I've heard, that's not the way to get good at doing comedy. Anyways, like I've had other comedians tell me, stay at the mic the whole time you're there. You're not just getting better by performing your set. You're getting better by observing other comedians, seeing what works for them, what doesn't work for them, being a part of the scene instead of just that selfish, I'm just going to go and perform and then I'm going to leave. You're almost too self-centered. You're not reflecting. You're not seeing what's actually working and what isn't working. You're just in your own head.
Yeah, and like I said, whether you want to look at it as an inspirational thing, you see somebody who's doing really good and be like, man, I wish I was that good, and it makes you step up your game. Or sometimes you see somebody and that person's dog shit, I'm better than them, and then it makes you try harder to bury them. Mm-hmm. Whatever fuels your ship. That's not an expression, I just made it up. But and even performing to dead room isn't completely valueless. It's not as good as performing for an audience that's going to react. But with the opportunities that we have, like, I mean, if we lived in New York City, if I had an idea this afternoon, I could go and try it at 3 different places in front of 3 different audiences and kind of work on it.
We got to do it when we can do
we
it.
we don't. The act of saying the words out loud is better than not.
Yeah.
It's nothing compared to doing it in front of a receptive audience that's going to laugh at the good parts and not laugh at the not good parts. That's feedback that you need to get better. But just going through the motion of saying the words, I still occasionally I always have a better set if I run it through a couple of times in my house before the show.
Yeah.
Or sometimes if you see me in a parking lot outside of a show talking to myself, I'm delivering my set just so that I get, just for me, there's different levels of like a bit working. Like for the first little bit, like say, especially if I'm telling a story that's an actual thing, the first couple of times I tell it, I'm just telling the story like I'd be telling my wife when I get home and she's like, "How was your day?" And it's not always funny, but it's just getting used to the beats and noticing if there is a little pocket or there's a line or something that you say that gets a laugh. Noticing that, but especially when I'm doing storytelling, like coming up with the tags and the punchlines and stuff, that happens somewhere down the road. It's sometimes I'm lucky and it's there in the first draft, and you know, the longer that you do comedy, your first draft gets better and better, but that's never finished. But just so figuring it out and then saying it enough times that I know the bit, then I can get a little bit more loose with it, and that's when I kind of will improvise new tags and punchlines kind of in the moment when I'm not worried about remembering the words. And usually if I'm forgetting something in a comedy set, especially if I'm telling a true story, I'll just get locked into the muscle memory of just telling the story, and I forget some of like the best punchlines and tags.
Yeah.
Because it's not an organic part of the story. It's not like a plot event that happened.
Yeah.
That's just an extra line that you'd throw in there to get a chuckle out of the drunks. So that's the first thing that I forget. So the more experience I have saying the thing out loud, whether that's in front of an audience or I ran my set that I'm doing tonight in the car on the way up here.
In the car is nice because people see you talking to yourself and they just think you're on like a phone, a hands-free call. They're like, no, this guy's not crazy at all. He's just talking to someone.
Yeah, and time. I practice for the timing too, because I've gotten better at taking pieces out of a longer thing and like doing the bomb show in St. John where you have a minute and a half. For a long time, like when I first started hosting No Jokes Barred, I had 4 10-minute long bits, which isn't really a good.
It's a big gap for the laughs.
It's not. I can't do a 10-minute bit in between every comedian.
No.
And so that I incorporated the joke book. I used to do a set at the beginning where I would do one of my 10-minute sets, and then in between everybody, I would get out my stupid joke book and do that. But I forgot where I was going with this topic. But yeah, practice is good, and just saying it out loud in the car or in an audience. The more comfortable I am with the words, the more. If I'm on autopilot for the memorization piece, that opens up the kind of being in the moment and, you know, coming up with a good line just off the top of your head or in response to how somebody reacted to what you're saying in the audience. And if somebody says something and then you have a good response, then sometimes you can bake that into the bit and it sounds organic. Sometimes you try to recreate a moment and it just doesn't work. You can't be like, hey, I told this joke at an open mic and this person responded this way and then I had this really funny response. That's not always.
Authenticity's big now.
Yeah, you have to pretend like you just thought of this.
When people ask me that, like that know me, that have never come to see comedy. They're always just like, so do you just like go up there and just do stuff, or like do you write your things ahead of time? And I'm like, it would be terrible if I didn't write ahead of time. If I just got up there and riff, maybe 5 minutes of riffing, but 10 or 15 minutes of just like reacting to like, yeah, your coat's, that's a shitty coat. Like,
Yeah, and it's again, the more you have the memorization down, then there is the opportunity to think of stuff in the moment. But I was saying with the timing, if I'm telling like a long form story that's like 10-ish minutes, give or take, and I've got a set amount of time on a show, if I've got a 10-minute spot and I've got a 10-minute story, I've got to make sure that it fits in there. I feel like it would be easier for, again, I'm not good at kind of set up punchline one-liner type jokes, but I feel like that's easier to be flexible, because if you've got 100 10-second long jokes, then you just keep an eye on your time, and when it's wrapping up, you switch to the closer and you're walking away. Whereas if I'm telling a story and I'm at like 9.5 minutes of my 10-minute set, and I'm kind of in the middle of it, it's not always easy to wrap it up in a satisfying way, other than hey, that's my time anyway, you don't get to hear the end of this story.
Yeah, I've never dived too much into the stories. Like, I have stories that I do bits about, but I think the longest story bit that I do is like 3 minutes long. Everything's been like not one-liners, but like that middle part where it's not a one-liner, but it's a couple setups and then a punch. And that's helped a lot, because I mean, most of the mics that we do, you got 7 minutes, you got 10 minutes. If you got 15, you're like, well, thank you. Right? Like, it's hard when someone, I've seen you do your bits and your stories, there are payoffs in them. They are worth it. But people's attention spans are so low now. You must find it's hard. You're looking at the crowd.
Yeah,
You're just like, you want to tell them, be like, just wait for it. It's coming. There's something here.
it's
Just,
tougher, especially trying to do that in front of a barely conscious music open mic audience.
yeah.
And I kind of did it backwards. Most people, if they ever get to the storytelling thing, it's after they start out writing kind of quicker jokes. I started out with stories and then learned how to tell jokes
You
after.
started long and brought it back.
Yeah, because I mean, when I first started doing stand up, I was super into like Henry Rollins spoken word stuff. Do you know who Henry is? He's the singer from Black Flag and like Rollins band.
Okay.
He,
So he does like poetry, like
it's not poetry. It's spoken word. It's storytelling. Like, he talks about traveling the world, and it's often funny, but it's
Like
not.
Dave Chappelle.
It's not stand up. It's not.
kind of like, well, Dave Chappelle's kind of like that now. It's
Dave
almost-
Chappelle has lots of punchlines and jokes built into the stories, but he's just gonna, hey,
just stories.
I was on tour and I went
Okay.
to Mexico and I met this person and this happened, and he's naturally funny, so that comes out, but there aren't like punchlines. And that's kind of, I was a fan of comedy like growing up. Like, I had the Eddie Murphy Delirious VHS that I watched 1,000 times when I was a kid. And there's lots of storytelling in that, so that's probably an inspiration too. And
Yeah.
you know,
So
Cosby and Pryor and all that kind of stuff. I was super into Bill Hicks when I was in university.
80s and early 90s was your big comedy inspiration growing up.
Yeah, but at the time when I started, the Henry Rollins thing was kind of the most dominant influence probably on me, and for better or worse. I mean, I have told long stories that go nowhere and have no jokes in them. Usually that's just the first draft, and hopefully the next time that I do it, it'll get slightly less boring until it's good. But yeah, it's a tough needle to thread, but there's benefit to having restraints on your time. Like, doing music open mics, they give a band like 15-20 minutes to play a few songs, so I would just go up and ramble. I've got one of the first bits that I wrote that I still kind of do a version of, used to be like a 20-minute long story. Now I can tell it in 5 to 10, depending on where I'm fitting it, and I don't even really know what I had to cut it, what the other 10 minutes that I cut out were.
I'm grateful for doing the music open mics in the beginning, because I felt like
Gives you thick skin.
gives you thick skin. I've done comedy shows where I'm going up there and I'm feeling like, I did this set 2 weeks ago. It did really well. This audience isn't receptive to it, and it kind of just goes off my back, and I can move on from it within a day. But I feel like if I didn't have that in the beginning, because the music open mics, they were literally just the 90% of the crowd wasn't into it, and the bartender's like, that was kind of funny, and that's all I needed to keep me going.
Yeah.
Versus if I just started on comedy shows, I might have I don't know if I would have kept going. I might have been like, this isn't going anywhere. Versus the music open mics are just like, this isn't going anywhere, but I'm building to be something better.
Yeah, and it's easier to power through if you're bombing, but you don't want to completely abandon your set midstream, and
Don't quit.
for better or worse, and especially if you know that it's an early draft and I need to get over this hump before it can get good.
Yeah.
You can you can hide how demoralizing it is if you're telling it in front of an audience that doesn't like you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's easier to do when the default was best case scenario. The drunk guy looks up and hears you for a couple of seconds and chuckles, and then goes back to having his conversation with the person at his table. If you're already used to that as the default, then if I'm telling a story that I'm not sure, I think it's a good story, I'm not sure if it's funny yet, and I'm just gonna say what happened today, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. There's a lot of stuff where I'll try the story and I'll tell it a couple of times and I just can't find an angle on it, so that goes back on the shelf. Maybe someday in the future I think of a new angle that I can incorporate into that old thing that didn't really work before. I've been doing it long enough that I've got a good back catalog of orphans that never really worked at the time, but every now and then I'll write a new bit that can be absorbed into, and it works.
You don't strike me as a guy that gets like emotionally attached to a bit where like it's not working, but you just want it to work. Like you seem to be a guy that you see where it's working, and you accept that, versus like you see the guys that'll just get up there, and girls that'll just get up there, and you can tell they really love that bit, but it's never working. It's not working. It hasn't worked, but they just keep going at it. Like I've never seen you get up and repeatedly do the same bit that doesn't.
I've
work.
got some bits like that are for me, and they rarely work for the audience. But it's not something that I do every time that I go up. I might try it out once every 6 months if I'm feeling it, and occasionally somebody will find it as funny as I do. But sometimes there's one for me, but it's not. I'm not somebody that has.
You're not forcing it down the audience's throat.
And especially I have long form stuff, and I've got such a long list of old material that I never really retire anything unless I just don't like it anymore. It doesn't make any sense where I'm at in my life. I can always, if I've got nothing new, I can go off and look through my notes and find something that I haven't talked about in 5 years and dust it off and put that extra 5 years of experience to it, and maybe it saves it, and sometimes it doesn't. I've got a couple of things that I know there's something there, but I just haven't quite figured out how to sell it to an audience yet, and every now and then it comes up, but I like to keep it in the background, and sometimes all it takes is some kind of current event that can add kind of a framing to the thing that never really worked before.
Yeah, there's something that you can relate the audience to, and they can get into where your mindset was when you thought of that bit.
Yeah, but it's not like you'll see me this week tell a thing and I tell this joke that doesn't work, and then the next time that you see me, I do the set and I tell that same joke and it sucks, and then you see me next. I've seen people where they've got one thing that they tell every time that they talk into a microphone, and it rarely works. I appreciate the effort, but that's not me.
Reflection and true to yourself. What would you say is the recipe for a long-term mic? For running like the longest open mic aside from the Wilsers, but I'd say yours is the longest because it's been No Jokes Barred. You've hosted it. It's been that show from the beginning. What do you think is what's the spice that's made that show persevere past countless shows that have started maybe had a pop in the beginning but simmered down? Yours has kept going, and I've seen it not have many people, and then I've seen it. How did everybody show up for this tonight? So you got something. What is it?
Spite, stubbornness, unwillingness to let my thing go. I don't know. It's just, again,
There's paper there. I was going to burn the whole studio down. I stopped it.
like I said, is I couldn't begin to make decisions based on what's good for anybody else, the other comedians or the audience for that matter. I put on the show that I would want to see, and I don't know. I feel just having the title be No Jokes Barred has kind of painted me into the corner where I'm kind of I can't be the no jokes barred guy and say, hey, except for this though.
Yeah.
And it's kind of and most of the shows that we do in New Brunswick or anywhere are effectively no jokes barred. There aren't many places where people are touchy about you can't talk about this kind of thing or you're not allowed to say that or that.
They just don't let you on the show. The ones that are
Yeah.
like that, they just don't even let you get on
Yeah,
the microphone.
yeah. There's lots of cowardly, quietly just distancing, but nobody will outright say, "Hey, you're not allowed to be on this show because you said this." I have gotten that, and I'm not going to pretend that I was any more reasonable in my reaction to that when people have told me that. Like for example, I did a show in Moncton, and amazing show. Like I booked it. Oh fuck it, it's closed. Hell's Basement. I put on a show. I booked it. I had myself and Brian Giles and Matt Richardson. I believe John Scove Nielsen. And I approached the guy and I wanted to put together a show. And we sold it out. Everybody had a great set. We lit that place on fire. The audience loved it. It was great. And they even the show was so successful, the venue owner gave us like an extra $100 or $200 on top of what we agreed to.
Oh wow.
And so that was one of the best shows that I ever had. And then after that, like a full year passed where I wasn't being booked on anything. It seemed to me like every other comedian in New Brunswick was regularly getting on these shows and not me. And eventually I reached out and was like, what did I do something? And somebody I was told that somebody complained about a bit that I had about dismembering strippers or prostitutes, which I don't have. I have a world famous guts bit that I usually only that's one of my more divisive ones that I'm a big fan of horror movies, and I wrote my equivalent of a horror comedy of a stand-up bit, and it's gross. Not usually a crowd pleaser. I like it. I usually only do that on my show. It's been very rare. I also told it at the reception for John Scove Nielsen and Taylor's wedding.
It's good wedding.
I had some drinks, but and the last time that I did the Hubcap Festival, that was my my blaze of glory. I did that, which was wildly inappropriate for those circumstances.
You weren't ending up on the CBC for that one.
No. So I know that the guy that ran Hell's Basement had seen me do that bit at Hubcap. My conspiracy theory, unverified, is that he knows that I have that bit and he just has some other problem, so he invented this complaint. I did a set about strippers, and he knows that I have this guts and intestine bit, and I think in his mind he combined those and created a complaint. He also said that somebody complained about me using the F word, the mean one.
Oh.
But it was in the context of I was talking about we don't need to dwell on this topic, but years ago when I used to teach, I relayed a story where one of the kids in my class was calling another kid the F word. And I was telling the story of me keeping that kid after class and explaining to him why you should not be using that word as an insult for the other kids. And I said the word. So in that context, I'm saying, don't say this. It's a bad thing to call somebody. I did say the word, though. I find it hard to believe that somebody would complain about it in that context, but maybe. But even in that case, that's not something that you just ghost me for like a year. If right after that show somebody really did complain and said, hey, somebody didn't like that you used this word, if you want to come back here, I don't want you to use that word anymore. That's a decision that I can make. And I probably would have been fine with I mean, I probably would have made fun of him behind his back and talk shit to my comedian friends. But that's up to me. I can either say, well, tough luck, I'm not doing this show anymore if you're going to tell me what I can and can't do. Or I can say, okay, I can work within those boundaries. That way it's up to me and it's very transparent. To just not get booked for a year and then hear this story that I find dubious,
Just kind of making up a scapegoat. Just like, I remember the girl with the septum piercing that was in the corner. She didn't like the set, so the 99% of the crowd loved it, but the septum piercing lady did not like it. So you are not welcome back here, John. And here it is, totally out of context, and you didn't even do that bit there. So
yeah, and I understand. I'm a little bit, depending on the circumstance. Like, that was a comedy club in a comedy club audience. If some local bar who's struggling to make ends meet anyway allows an open mic to happen, and we're yelling the C word at people while they're eating their fish and chips, I can understand the business case against that scenario. But not in a room where I'm crushing and one person out of 100 has a problem, if that person even exists.
It's like we put on a rock show and your solo is just too rock, so we're just gonna cut that out.
Yeah, and again, my show, I call it No Jokes Barred, and I want to mean it. There are shows that have rules, and again, if everybody's up front with what the rules are, then I can decide whether or not I want to do that show. I'm not gonna do a show where they say, hey, these are the rules, and then I'll go and purposefully break them. I mean, the hubcap thing is a border case. That was the bitterness winning out. I had fun, but
yeah, it's not fun when it's just after the fact. I just didn't like that. And then
I don't like the I know it when I'll see it rule. And there's been times the best version of this that's happened to me, when we used to do shows at the Canvas in Moncton. This was a comedy show that they had set up in like a lobby bar in a hotel.
I did that in the hotel, yeah.
And the rules were kind of squishy. It was kind of, this isn't a clean show, but, we're in the lobby of a hotel, so kind of cool your jets. And I did some material that I would defend, but the owner happened to be in the audience and didn't appreciate a couple of jokes that I made. And Jason, the guy that was running it, he sent me a message, very reasonable. He said, hey, the owner saw it and he didn't appreciate this kind of material, so if you want to come back, then let's cool it on that stuff. And I was like, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. I
was happy to have been told where the line was and that I crossed it. I didn't cross that line on purpose. I didn't know it was going to be a problem, but But that wasn't like, you said the bad thing, so I'm not going to ask you to come back again. That was, hey, you said something, let's maybe not do that again.
Reflect and learn.
Yeah, and I was allowed to come back, and I made the decision for myself that I wanted to continue doing this show, so I'm fine not crossing that line.
And it really just comes down to, I think, who you are when you're doing that particular material. I had an experience at a mic that I did a couple times, and then I went and did what I thought was like one of my best sets up to that point, and a couple people in the audience were not happy. And then the DJ running the it was a music open mic, it wasn't even a comedy open mic, shut my mic off, turned the music up, told me not to come back again. And I know from doing shows there in the past, like they have a comedy open mic that they do at that bar, and depending on who you are, you could get up and get up there and do 10 minutes of like talking about all of your sexual experiences and getting very graphic details of what you did with so many individuals.
Yeah.
But then if you get up and you look like me, you'll say something that they're like, well, that's not, this is we want cleaner material here. Yeah. Well, we want dirty, but we don't want you to do dirty. You're just not the right person to do that.
Well, there's, and I have some leeway for people that they didn't really anticipate the thing that you were going to do. So it's hard to kind of get ahead of it and preemptively say we don't like this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I run into that a lot because I mean, I'm not trying to be offensive.
You do what
I'm
you
not
think is
saying that
funny.
I'm not. That's just my sense of humor. It's not like I've got two jokes in front of me and this is the nice one about going on a family picnic and this one is about blasting loads and I choose this one.
We're
Um
going loads.
but it's just yeah, like if I wish I could write like a Jim Gaffigan set that's funny and inoffensive.
Yeah.
That's not in me, and for me to try that, it's probably not going to turn out well. Writing comedy is hard anyway, but if you add the extra layer of trying to write something that doesn't come natural to you, it's even more difficult. But the problem that I run into is like almost all of my bits, I could probably say them all without using a single swear word. I'm not that like I have swear words in my comedy, but that's not the primarily. And I've got dirty stuff. And when people say a clean show, usually what they mean is tone it down on the sexual dirty stuff.
Yeah.
People don't have the language or expectation to kind of police dark, and there's not really a good way to describe that other than kind of a I know it when I see it
Yeah.
thing. Like, yeah, like there is if I have like a dark joke about like my dead mother or something, and it's funny, but it's also a little sad,
Mm-hmm.
or dark where I'm talking about kind of a third rail issue of society. I don't think that I'm saying anything that's like beyond the pale. But if I'm poking holes in kind of a sacred cow of society or something like that, that's a different reaction than blasting loads gets.
With No Jokes Bar, you've been doing it long enough, and there's like people that I've run into, Brian Otter, people from Halifax, that'll be like, yeah, that was where I did my first set. There's a lot of people that have started on your show. How many comics do you think you've seen start at No Jokes Barred, stop, or start and now are still doing it? Like, how many people do you think have been through that?
That are still doing. I don't know. There's been dozens of people that I gave their first set to, and some of them are still at it. Some of them have stopped doing comedy. Some of them have moved away. Um, some of them just don't talk to me anymore for unknown reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but a lot of people, and it's I say that I'm selfish, and I did start it to give myself stage time that I wasn't otherwise getting. Like I didn't want to just rely on maybe getting booked on the Wilsers Room once a month. I wanted to have at least this one. I know I'm going to be on at least
Yep.
on my show, and that's the only thing I really have control over.
You got to eat.
So there's yeah, so there's that, and but I don't know. I just it's easier. It's less intimidating than a music open mic because
Mm-hmm.
even like I said, even a bad audience that came to watch a comedy show on purpose is going to be better than a music show that did not come to a show for comedy on purpose. And so it's easier to get in, and posting every month unless I've got a lot of spillover from a previous month and I've already got kind of I'm booked a couple of months out. Most of the time, I will post in our Facebook group, "Hey, I'm doing a show in St. John at this place on this day. Who wants a spot?"
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody's never done it, they're at the top of the list.
Yep.
If and from there, whoever did it the previous month is at the bottom of the list. That doesn't mean that necessarily somebody isn't going to be able to do it twice in a row. It just depends on how many people ask.
Depends
But
on the interest. Who's
I
there?
I prioritize based on in general how long it's been since they've been on the show. So that's very approachable to somebody who doesn't know me personally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'll make the post, and again, this isn't necessarily open to the public. Sometimes I'll meet somebody and just in person they'll tell me that they've been thinking about trying comedy, and I'll offline offer them a spot, and then once they do it, I generally I don't know how other people do it. I wait until somebody has done the show or done a show before I add them to the group, because I've seen a lot of people that have thought about dabbling in comedy and were invited into kind of the inner circle of the private group and then just never bothered. And I don't know.
It just becomes a friend group. They never actually get into comedy. They're
Well, not even that. They're just somebody that nobody has seen for years, and they've never. But they kind of have access. We don't really have conversations in there as much as we used to because people are touchy, and those conversations often went off the rails. But I don't know. If you're just thinking about maybe doing comedy, I feel like there should be some barrier to overcome before you get to be on the inside. Not that there's much to see there, but still.
especially for the longer sets. Like I know with the Bomb show, the Inferno show, and then This Might Be Funny. That 1 or 2 minute thing of like, no, this is totally open. Come and try it.
Yeah,
That's a good element to throw out there. But for your show, I mean, you're kind of selling tickets to it. You're bringing a crowd there that is expecting to be entertained. Somewhat.
I still book it like an open mic. That hasn't changed, and there isn't anybody that I would say no to now because I'm selling tickets that I would have let come on when it was a passing the bucket around. But just responding to, hey, I'm doing a show on this date. Who wants in? That seems like it would be a lot less intimidating than just somebody being told, hey, this guy Jon Forward runs a show, send him a message and ask him, and that kind of stuff. Like even, I don't know, like I said, the Wilsers Room, no one's ever said no to me, but they don't post like who we're doing a show on this day, who wants to do one. If I want to do that show, I need to figure out who's running it now. I need to reach out to that person and wonder whether or not they hate my guts, and I don't even know the date of the show. I'm just like, hey,
this happened.
Hey, person, are you willing to put me on? When is it? And yeah, can I have that seems like less inclusive to me.
No, it's a little club. It's a club. Do you you've seen a lot of people start.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot of first sets.
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed the pattern? Is it better for people to start good, or do you find longevity wise is better for them to become good?
It's all over the place, but the pattern that I see a lot is sometimes, and this isn't for everybody, but sometimes when people are better than average right out the gate, that little bit of and then they get positive feedback, and they're getting booked on lots of shows, and people are patting them on the back and giving them their kudos as they deserve if they had a good set. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that removes the spite element that drives me, because sometimes if you start out really good, they might be starting at a higher level, but they plateau much easier, and they kind of, I don't know if it's that they stop trying or that's just everything that they have.
Yeah.
But everybody is different, but as far as, it's hard to tell from a first set where that same person's going to be at in 5 years, if they're going to be at the same level, or if they're going to even still be around, or if they're going to be, setting the place on fire. But the most common
sending death threats for the show.
I meant in a good way.
Oh, okay.
Like blowing the roof off.
I'm done with comedy. Gas can.
No. Like the kids, like fire emojis.
Okay,
that's what I meant.
Lit.
But yeah, I have seen a few people that start out very, very good right out the gate, and then not improve by at all.
That just float on that goodness.
Yeah. And I mean, being really, really good for a new comedian doesn't necessarily mean actually objectively really good at comedy. And there's,
you get a benefit that you just started. People are like, "Oh, you just started doing this. Wow, you're really good." Versus if you keep that same set and then you're just like, "I've been doing this for 10 years and it's the same that you were doing." You're not going to have this. People are going to be like, "Oh, you've been doing this for 10 years. Okay, you're okay."
Yeah, and even individual comedians. Speaking for myself, I've gone through several phases of, like when I sent those early messages to Shane to try to get on at the 3 Mile. At that point, I'd been doing music open mics for a couple of years, but I was probably 6 months into doing actual comedy shows. And at that time, I was like, I'm amazing. Of course I should be booked on this. And then you take a couple of lumps and you're like, oh, I suck. Should I even keep doing this? And then it goes up and down and you're like, all right. I thought that I was good before, but now I've got it figured out. And then you get cocky and then you take some lumps and you realize that you're not as good as you thought you were. And then, and depending on the person, sometimes when you get those lumps, that makes people quit, or it just makes people wallow and they just continue their downward spiral forever. Or some people like me, the bigger the failure, the more I want to do everything I can to not repeat that failure.
It's kind of like breaking the horse, right?
Yeah.
I saw a show that I was at. I'm not gonna say the name. If he's watching this, he knows we had a big drunken talk after the show. But he started out and he was really good. He got a pop right from the beginning and just kind of kept that pop. And then he did a show at the club here, and it didn't go as great as his other shows did. And he was in the back having kind of that moment that I'm like, I've had that. I've had that moment many times, and every time that I've had that moment, whenever I have those moments now, I'm always like, oh, something good's coming. Something good is really coming because I just bombed, so I'm gonna be better now. And this was his first one, and I said to him, I was like, this is your introduction to comedy, because now it didn't go good. Now you get to go back and either reinvent and go up, or don't. But the bombs are better.
Yeah,
get better.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I don't think that a comedian can ever be good if they don't bomb. You can be okay, you can survive, but you can't be great without the failures. And that's why I try not to get too into my comfort zone. Like, I've seen people come up primarily only doing my show that they can say some wild shit and nobody's going to get upset, and they do well, and then they try to push it a little bit more than another show is equipped for, and it flames out pretty bad. I mean, I don't often have the opportunity, but given if I could wave a magic wand, I would like to do shows for all kinds of different people in different places and different tastes and all that stuff. And
don't get in a bubble.
Yeah, if I only lock into, like, I don't want to be one of the comedians that says, no, I'm only going to do this one show or only shows in this city with my friends and this particular audience, and it becomes a circle jerk. I want to and like. If I'm doing a show that isn't the same vibe as a No Jokes Barred, I don't want to bomb. I'm not going into somewhere where it might have a more progressive audience. I'm not trying to lay waste and upset those people and bomb. I want to do well. So I might poke a little bit within the set, but overall, I'm going to choose my material so that it's not going to flame out for this audience. I'm using a lot of fire metaphors. Like I used to enjoy doing before COVID. They used to do shows at the Abbey in Fredericton on Queen Street, and that was like downstairs in a vegan cider restaurant, and that was a different vibe than what I was used to. And I would go in there, and instead of talking about blasting loads, I'll talk about my childhood traumas, and they eat that shit up. More of the one man show stuff, which is in my repertoire. I don't have clean stuff, but I've got some more I've got lots of storytelling about my childhood and my family and stuff. I've got some dirty jokes. I've got a little bit of like political stuff. I'll choose something that's appropriate for that venue. What I decide to do on any particular show might also be informed. Like I'm doing the show at Comic Sutra tonight, so I've got my set list, and I might focus on every show that I do leading up to that. I'm going to pick out one of those pieces so that I can practice it, so that I can get ready for this show. But if I'm going into that kind of a situation, I'm not necessarily going to start with my spanking strippers bit. But, I might talk about getting kicked out of my house or something when I was a kid instead, and that's...
You have enough to adjust, though, because you walk into a room and you have the idea of the show you're going to do. You walk into that room and the whole room is like 65, 70-year-olds. You're going to be like, hey, I'm going to tweak this a little bit. I was anticipating 30.
I'm better than I was, but I'll make a decision beforehand. I'm still not great at tweaking it for the situation that I'm in. I'll kind of decide what I'm doing tonight, and I'll go down with the ship if I have to. My biggest bomb ever was the one time I got booked to middle at Yuck Yucks Halifax, and I don't remember. This was 2016. I think I started in like 2012-ish. So I was about 4 years in, and again, 2 of those years are music open mics, and then there was a couple of years of maybe getting up once a month. So I don't know how the experience scale, measuring it in years, doesn't always make sense. But and I never was like counting my sets or anything. But I got booked to middle. I'd done like amateur night down there and did pretty good. So I got booked to do like the 20 to 25 minute long middle set, and I had my set in my head. This is I had 3 main chunks that I was gonna do that was gonna get me through my time. And they had shows Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Thursday, Friday, I'm not going to say that I destroyed, but I did pretty good. It was okay. Nothing to complain about. Nothing that put me on anybody's radar or anything. It was fine. Nobody left disappointed, but I wasn't like, yeah, nailed it. But then Saturday came around, and I show up at the show, and I find out 30 minutes before the show starts that we're sold out tonight, and also most of the reason that it's sold out is because we're doing a fundraiser for a girls volleyball team.
Oh, no.
So it's a sold out audience, but most of them are there to raise money for their children's volleyball team.
They're not there for a comedy show. They're there for the fundraiser.
And in that moment, I'm like, well, again, I didn't have as much material. I wasn't as flexible. I don't know if I could have just on the fly come up with a different 25-minute long set. I probably had the material if I had to, but just to put it together and deliver it at all competently was not in my skill set at the time. So I remember taking the stage, and the first bit that I did was usually a crowd pleaser that I don't think had ever bombed. Just barely anything from the audience. And then I got through the second chunk, and I could start hearing people muttering like, oh no, and in my head I was like, I'm closing on the even crazier one than if you guys had a problem with these first 2. This is, and I made the mistake of saying out loud, oh, you didn't like that one, well, strap in.
Oh shit, that's
and people are like, oh god, no. And I was like, oh, what's that, you've had enough? The whole room lit up. Yes, we've had enough of you, Jon Forward. And I was expecting maybe there was a few grumblers in the front, but I didn't realize that the whole room was against me. And so the panic of my best, most crowd-pleasing stuff has already not done well. And when I asked the room if they would prefer that I not be here, in unison, better response than any of my material. I was about 17 minutes into my set, and I just panicked, and I was just like, all right, well, anyway, let's bring the host back up, and I just kind of bailed on it.
Oh, man.
And, had a shame spiral back in the hotel room afterwards, and, talked to some people afterwards in Halifax who were like, oh, don't beat yourself up. We all have a bad night. Don't worry about it. I'm like, but this was my first Yuck Yucks weekend, and they're never gonna book me again. And everyone's like, oh, don't be crazy. It's just one bad night. Don't worry about it. And then come to find out years later, it was was a problem for me when the St. John Club opened. The guy that was running that was kind of, before he had decided on Yuck Yucks, he was kind of sniffing around the scene and talking to me. He would show up to No Jokes Barred, and we'd had lots of conversations. He was in talks with Shane and deciding what he was going to do. Eventually, he kind of got wooed into he wanted to do something, so he got convinced to do Yuck Yucks. And like in the lead up to this, he was telling me like, no, we need to get you in there when we start doing amateur nights. You can start hosting this. We need to get you out of that R bar. And I was like, great, I'm on the ground floor. My dreams are coming true. When I started comedy, there was nothing going on. Now there's going to be a Yuck Yucks, and like the guy likes me, and I'm in. This
Mhm.
is it. It's all up from here. And then they started doing shows, and I was like, well, can I do a guest spot or something? And he was like, yeah, we're not really doing that yet. We're waiting until the club's kind of established before we start doing like guest spots and the amateur nights and stuff.
And look where they are now.
And then I started seeing some of my other friends getting booked for these guest spots, and I'll see this person like, hey, thanks Yuck Yucks for the opportunity, and I would be like, hey, what about me? And I was working shift work, so I was uptown on like a Thursday night, and I ran into Andrew Albert, rest in peace. He's a touring pro comedian that is no longer with us, and I was friendly with him. I'd done a few shows with him in the past. And I kind of told him my sob story about how, I've been trying to get my foot in the door. I don't know what's going on. And he was like, "Oh no, you show up at the show tomorrow night, and I'll get you on." And so I went to Yuck Yucks. It was my first time in the building in St. John, and I'm in the green room, and Andrew was like, "Oh hey, good to see you. Let me go tell the guy that you're gonna do a guest spot tonight." And I'm in the green room. I'm like, finally, this is it. And then Andrew comes in and with a solemn look on his face and tells me, I like he seemed bewildered by the whole situation. He was just like, he says we can't put you on because Yuck Yucks has a no Jon Forwards policy because of what happened in Halifax.
Oh,
And I was just so embarrassed, and I was like, I just left because it was mortifying.
you can't stay in the room. I wouldn't have stayed. You can't stay there after that.
No, and then like a week later they had, or maybe not a week later, but at some point in the not distant future after that, they were doing a weekend like Just for Laughs showcase shows. So I knew that there'd be Friday, Saturday they had these Just for Laughs showcase shows, and then on Sunday was going to be like James Mullender's comedy boot camp. So I knew there was going to be 3 nights in a row of probably sold out people that like comedy in St. John.
Mm-hmm.
So I grabbed some friends, and each of those nights, not on the way in, as people were leaving those shows, I handed out flyers for my next show, which I'm not going to pretend there was no spite involved in that decision, but
Mm-hmm.
also, who cares?
Yeah.
I've gone to concerts and had people handing out flyers to the people lined up to get into the venue and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. That's not an unusual thing. Now again, there was some spite, but somebody had tattled on me, and the Yuck Yucks guy came out with one of my flyers, and he was pissed. He's like, "How would you feel if I was standing outside the R bar handing out Yuck Yucks flyers?" I'm like, "Have at it." I put other people's shows up on like the TV, and I have like a slideshow going throughout the show. I was
Mm-hmm.
promoting stuff, and to my head, I was like, "Fuck you," and I'm like, "This is Yuck Yucks. What do you don't have any reason to feel threatened by my little operation."
This
And
that's what feeds Yuck Yucks is open mics, getting comedians to start that get good that can then do Yuck Yucks.
yeah, so anyway, he was pissed, and that furthered the beef. And yeah, there was some and I remember Darren Frost came into town, and he was given like his Saturday afternoon workshop for the local comedians, and he was rightfully kind of chastising the group of us because there were available guest spots that just nobody asked for that weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of, and I get where he's coming from, like, why aren't you guys taking this opportunity to be on like a pro show and get seen and practice? And I was like, I'm not allowed. And he kind of didn't believe me, and I'm like, no, yeah, I've tried. I'm not allowed to do these. And Darren eventually talked to the guy, and I don't know if Darren convinced him to change his mind or if the other guy just pretended that I was full of shit the whole time just to save face. But however, again, I don't know the details of what the conversation was, but Darren sent me a message and he said, I talked to the guy and you're good. You can sign up for guest spots. And I did do some guest spots, and I was starting to have like a good relationship with that guy, but they went out of business shortly after that.
So you did do Yuck Yucks in St. John at the end of it.
Yeah,
before
guest spots. I never got booked for I've still never been booked to middle again. I've gone down and tried to get my foot in the door in the new iteration in Halifax, and to no end. It's oh well. I have no control over it. I try not to be bitter, but
you run a show and you don't block people. I've never heard of anybody saying I'm not allowed on Jon Forward's show, which is good. We're gonna wrap up very soon because it's November and I don't have heat in this studio. I'm seeing my breath. My fingers are cold.
My nipples are rock hard.
Yeah, it's getting chilly in here. I'm gonna build walls soon and put heat in here so we're gonna be more winterized because this started in the summer. It was really easy to do this in the summer, but now it's getting cold.
It's turned into an iced coffee over the course of the conversation.
It's getting cool. I mean, my pop is staying cold, which is good. So you run No Jokes Barred in St. John. Right now it's currently at Wasted Day. When's the next one?
I don't know.
You don't know yet?
We just had one on November 1st. I haven't even asked about December. Generally, it's hard to get an open mic booked on a weekend in December just because, office Christmas parties and stuff.
Yep. They
usually want to keep it open, and that's... and usually I think people pay to rent the place out, so that's taking up a Saturday or a Friday night of a comedy show at a bar that it's not the best financial position.
There's a Facebook page for No Jokes Barred. If
people
look that up.
Jon Forward Comedy is probably the better way. The Facebook changed how things. I set up that No Jokes Barred group on Facebook a long time ago, but Facebook has changed how things work, and a group is kind of obsolete. You can't really make events for the group anymore. I try to remember to share stuff in there, but when I'm creating an event, it's via Jon Forward Comedy, and if I remember, then I'll share it on the No Jokes Barred group website? Also. JonForward.com. For reasons I won't get into, it's pretty bare bones at this time.
Do you post the events on there?
No, right now it's just like a bio and a picture of me. There is a contact form, so if you're on there and you want to reach out and say, "Hey, when's your next show and can I get on?" you can contact me.
All right, I got the website right underneath here. You can't see it obviously because we're in the real world, but the digital space can see your website there.
They can go and see your
picture. They can go see your picture. Jon Forward Comedy is the Facebook page where you see where your shows are, see where you're booking stuff. You're a blessing to the province. You gave me my start. You've given a lot of people their start, and you've maintained a show for people to keep going to, despite venues closing, emails from random individuals who we never saw that were complaining. But you keep doing it, and I want to thank you very much.
Thank you. My masochism has served me well.
Thank you, guys. Check this guy out on Facebook. It's been a fun time. I've got to go thaw my hands out now and work on how to get heat in the studio. Thank you, John. You've been great. Cheers.